Hello, hello. Hopefully you guys can see and hear me okay. If you could post a comment, let me know, that'd be great. Hello, hello. Okay, I think we've got 10 people watching. Excellent. Okay, one of my Viva colleagues says, let me know. Looks like all good. Welcome everyone. Yeah, good. Please keep that chat civil, straight on topic. Perfect. So good evening, everybody, and welcome on to this live stream for the CIMA SCS case study. My name is Stuart Murphy, so I'm going to be your guide on our roadmap for the next hour or so. Let me show you what we have in store. I will tell you a little bit about myself because I'm the tutor for Viva for the SCS exam. We'll go into a little bit about details about the SCS exam. And then I thought, seeing as, if you do sign up with us for a course, I'm going to be your teacher, then I will tell you a little bit about my teaching philosophy. So you know what you're in for. And then we'll go through how would I go about preparing for the SCS exam. And then at the end, I'll give you my top tips on how to get ready and pass the exam. So please do hang on to the end. Right. So a little bit about myself. So my name's Stuart Murphy, and I've done a few different things. So apart from being an SCS tutor, so I was planning to be a pilot in the RAF like my dad. But unfortunately, it turns out I'm colorblind. So I went and I did chemistry at university, and I enjoyed chemistry, but you got to the point where an experiment takes an entire day, and you're in the lab on your own a lot. So I thought I don't fancy that. So I joined BA Systems on their graduate scheme. So I think there were about 600 people that applied for the scheme, and I was one of 6 people that got accepted. And while I was there, I did 5 different jobs in 5 years. So I worked in Wharton, which I don't know if you know Wharton. It's in the northwest of England, and I was a systems accountant at that point. And then I actually went to America. So I was one of the first and only graduates to do an exchange with America with BA Systems. And I eventually worked my way up to managing the accounts receivable team for Eurofighter. So I was responsible for about 10 people. And my team were invoicing crazy numbers because it's BA Systems, big company. So they were taking in about £3 billion in cash every single year. And I was at the end of the scheme, so it was a 5-year project, and I'd really enjoyed my training. So I'm CIMA qualified, and I worked my way up. But when I did this exam, we called it Top CIMA, and I really enjoyed it. I thought, I'll go back into the classroom, but this time I'll try being at the front. And so I taught for a training provider for a few years, and I taught loads of this stuff, all the strategy stuff, and I wanted to know I could actually do it. So I decided to have my own business, and I thought, well, I'm an accountant. I don't know about you guys, but I don't love risk. It's something we have to take if you want to make a bit of money, but it's not my favorite thing. So I thought, how can I go into business without taking too much risk? So I joined Minuteman Press. Sorry, joined. I spoke to Minuteman Press, who are a franchise. So I don't know if you guys know the statistics, but if you're a small business, you've got basically a 1 in 3 chance of surviving the first 3 years. Whereas if you're a franchise, you have a 2 in 3 chance of surviving the first 3 years. So I doubled my chances of survival by buying a franchise. And then they do printing, which, okay, I know it's not a super sexy industry, but it's pretty established, and there's loads of people who want printing. And then it turns out there was one already up and running near my house, actually. So it's been going for 15 years. It looked like that on the left. If you can see that, the signage was absolutely terrible. Turns out I was driving past that every day on my way to work when I was managing the Eurofighter team, and I didn't even notice it. The signage was so terrible. So I bought that with my wife. I met her at BA Systems. She's also a CIMA qualified accountant, and we ran it together for 3 years. And I got to apply a lot of the models. I mean, for me, like I say, I'm CIMA qualified. I think, if I was to tot up all the money I've made from being a qualified accountant, I probably made more money from all the wordy stuff than I have from actually the accounting stuff. So it's really, it does pay dividends in the end to get your head around all this stuff. And you guys have probably heard of the value chain. Yeah, the value chain. So, for example, the value chain. You look on the picture on the left. Does that look like quality or does it look cheap? The value chain basically says if you're going to be quality, everything should be quality. If you're going to be cheap, everything should be cheap. And thought, well, we can't compete with the big printers online anymore because they're super cheap. And so we'll go more the quality route. So we wanted to look more upmarket, and then so everything got upgraded. And so we applied some of these strategic models, like the value chain was a big one. So many people think, oh, well, I can charge a high price, but then keep everything cheap. It's like, no, if you want to have a high price and a great reputation, everything's got to be good quality, right? So it's a simple model, but it's an easy one. People tend to get it wrong. So we ran together for 3 years with my wife, and it was great. But it was a small business, so there were only me and there's about 5 of us there. And my wife, me and my wife were on holiday. That was like almost half the team. So no holidays without the wife for 3 years. Took its toll. So we decided to sell it. And that's the other thing that attracted me to a franchise is you've got an exit strategy there as well. Just got a comment through. I was going to say actually, thank you, Ram K. There. I'm one of the students in Viva Tuition preparing for SCS. Excellent. Thank you very much for coming along. So we sold it, and now I teach full time. And to be honest, I've always taught for a long time. Even when I was at BA Systems, I used to take some of the internal training courses. And when I was running the business, I'm a typical accountant, risk averse. So I wanted to diversify, so I keep teaching on the side as well. So I've been teaching for a long time, but I've done other things as well, which I think helps me to bring some of this stuff into the real world for you. Right. So that's one of the strengths I think I have as a teacher. I'm very, very practical, and I like to put things in real life context, not just this is what you need to do past the exam. Okay, so a bit about my background. Let's get a little bit into what we're here for. And yeah, like I said, Ramke, thank you for the comment there. I'm glad to see you coming along. Looking forward to having you in the class. If you guys do have any comments or questions, post them into the chat. What I'll do is every now and again, I'll just pause and we'll make myself bigger and we'll talk about some of the questions. I can share them on the screen as well. So that'd be great if you guys want to post anything. So it's a 3-hour long exam, and you're basically looking at 3 1-hour sections, and every section has to be completed. And each section tends to have 2 or 3 subtasks. So technically, I've got to leave that in there because, technically, it could give you 3, but I generally find there's 2. There's an A and a B, and then there'll be like a 50-50 split in terms of the marks, or a 60-40 quite commonly. So it tends to be 2 sort of sub questions along with it. So the hour, you guys might know from your previous case studies that the clock will move you on. So task 1, when you get to the end of the hour, it moves on to task 2. Task 2, end of the hour, moves on to task 3. I actually think that's not bad. I don't know how you guys find that with your other case study, but I think they've done you a little bit of a favor there, because it would be hard to manage 3 hours of time. I think it's much easier to manage 1 hour of time. It's a bit like, when I manage my shopping budget, I tend to have a weekly shopping budget rather than a monthly shopping budget. And I find it easier to sort of keep track of how much I'm spending that particular week. Whereas like if I had a whole month, I could splurge it all at the beginning and then run out partway through. So I think shorter amounts of time, smaller budgets do make it easier. It's written exams, so you're going to be typing out, explaining things wordy. It's human marks until ChatGPT takes over, and you're looking for about 80 out of 150. So CIMA, with the deal with the scale scoring by now, right? Because you've got to this level that they keep it a bit mysterious, don't they? So what's that? 80 out of 150. So you're looking at about 70%ish, aren't you? So the the way it works is if it was an easy case study, then they might raise the mark a little bit. If it was a harder one, they might drop it a little bit, basically. The pre-scene is on. We don't know yet. We're going to find out tomorrow. Tomorrow's a big day, right? So you've got something to look forward to, apart from it being Friday. And then there's the unseen element in the task. So there'll be a bit of a scenario in there. Okay, so that's the exam. One thing I would say just now, one of my tips, right? Don't get one early, is people tend to get very focused on one question or one particular requirement. But I find the best way to consider your exam performance, right, is your exam performance, your final score, if you like, is an average of how you did across the entire exam, right? So one of the questions I'd ask you if I met you guys coming out the exam and go, how'd it go? And you go, "Oh, I don't know," because everybody says, I don't know, right? I mean, that's what I would say. But my follow up question would always be, did you attempt every single question? And if you say yes, then you are in the best position to pass the exam, especially an exam like this. Because when you think about it, right, if I was to get 80% on every single question, right, so question one, 80%, question two, 80%, so my final score would be 80%, right? But the way people tend to do it is they try and ace every requirement, don't they? Like, I want to get the 100% on this. But then what tends to happen, especially when there's two requirements, is you run out of time on the second requirement. And if you run out of time, you might not be able to give it your full effort, or you might even have to skip it. And so you've got a zero there. And what I find is a zero can really drag that average score down. So that's my first tip is, manage your time effectively by spreading yourself across everything. Don't get focused on one particular requirement. You need to make sure you're answering both requirements with a decent effort to put yourself in the best position to pass the entire exam. It's a numbers game a little bit. Okay, so that's the first one. In terms of the I can statements, so you can find these on the CIMA website. So I'm not sure. Hopefully, you can read those okay. They look a little bit fuzzy on my screen, but I'm looking at a little bit smaller. So you know that they released these. So the first one, they're like core activity A. Develop business strategy. So I can evaluate strategic options. I can recommend strategic decisions, etc. Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to like map these onto your previous studies. If you find that you're not the only one, you won't be the first, you won't be the last. Even CIMA sometimes won't tell us like exactly, okay, which bit of the syllabus is that for? So we have done a little bit of unlocking for this. So we've got what we call our CIMA strategic blueprint, which can help sort of link these to the particular parts of E3, F3, and P3. But in terms of if you don't come on us, that's fine. How would I use these? Right. So, can I suggest a model to recommend strategic options? So think about it. Go back. I mean, a lot of it does come from E3. So that would be my first starting point with a few of these I can statements. So I go back and look at my E3 notes, and I'd be thinking, is there anything in E3 that helps me pick a particular strategic option? Is there anything else we pick a particular strategic option? So the model I tend to use is the SAFE model. Yeah, so it's suitable, acceptable, feasible. So can I suggest a model to recommend strategic option? Yes. So if I have to pick a strategic option for this case study company, then I'm going to go through. Is it a suitable option? So what do we mean by that? Does it fit with their mission? Right? If it doesn't fit with their mission, not suitable. Does it leverage their strengths? Yeah, that would be good if it did. Does it mitigate weaknesses? Well, that would be great if it did that. Does it take advantage of opportunities? Yeah, that would be good. Does it mitigate or reduce threats? Yeah, okay. Well, if the answer is yes to all those, great, cool. Then it's a suitable strategy. Is it an acceptable strategy? So who do we think about with acceptability? We think about our stakeholders, don't we? So who has a particular stake in the company? And this is thing like, I'd say, when you're managing your time, it's easy to go nuts, isn't it? Because there's tons of different stakeholders. But my advice would be focus on two or three. I like quality over quantity. So, and you can sort of do a little bit of thinking ahead of time. That's what I'm trying to do with these can I statements. So I'm thinking about, suitable strategies, acceptable strategies, feasible strategies for this case study, right? This is what we're going to do when the case study gets released. So I'm going to think about the key stakeholders, right? So without the case study, we'll have to use our imagination. But you can say, well, most companies probably have some investors, some shareholders, probably got some customers, probably got some employees, right? So they're good three stakeholders. So what does my investors think about this strategic option? What do my customers think about this strategic option? And what do my employees think about this strategic option? Cool. If they're all happy with it, fantastic. It's a good choice. And then lastly, is it feasible, right? So is it feasible? Is it, can you do it? Do you have the money? You've got the technology, you've got the know-how. Do you have the capacity to take it on? We always have an amazing way of overestimating how much time we've got and how much we can get done in that particular time. So management capacity is something I would think about as well. So that's how I would, go through. So can I suggest a model to recommend? So there you go. You've got your safe one, right? So safe. Go back and revise that. Try and apply that to the case study when it comes out. Can I suggest a model to evaluate strategic option? Yeah, cool. We've done our safe. What strategic options could be on the table for XYZ PLC? What XYZ PLC? So as we're reading the case study, we're going to think about, what could they do? And again, you can go back to the model and think, right, is there any models that help me come up with strategic options? And then you'd go back to Ansoff, wouldn't you? Ansoff's growth matrix. So what there are 4 options, aren't there, for Ansoff's growth matrix? So what does Ansoff say? Well, it says you could penetrate the market, right? So you're trying to sell the same thing to the same people, just more of them, right? You could develop a new product. Okay, so again, like you think, okay, for this company, how would they develop a new product? What would that product likely be? You could develop your market. So you're trying to sell the same things you always sell, but maybe different people. So that would probably look like going overseas normally. So like I take my products and I start selling in a different country. Or option number 4 is I could diversify. So I could have a new product to new people. So you could think about, okay, what diversification opportunities are there for this particular company? And then you could think about related and unrelated. So it would be great, when I'm doing all of this, right? I'm working my way through the I can statements, and I'm coming up with all of these ideas, and I'm trying to apply them to the case study. You're going to get to know the I can statements. You're going to get to know the case study. It's a very practical way of doing it. And who knows, you might come up with something that could come up in the exam if you start doing all this kind of scenario planning in your head. I would say, I don't want to oversell it. Like it's unlikely, the examiners do have an amazing way of coming up with something new every time that you didn't expect them to. But I find, I don't know about you, right? I'm an accountant, like I said, with the risk averse thing. The other problem I have as an accountant is I tend to lack a bit of imagination. You can tell me in the chat pod if you're the same. I really struggle to come up with ideas on the spot. And so, if you just throw me into a question and I've not had a chance to think about it beforehand, and then especially stick a clock in front of my face counting down, I'm not imaginative in the best of times, and so the stress is not going to help me. What I find works really well, though, is I think about things ahead of time and I come up with stock ideas. So if I've done all those, like I've tried to apply these I can statements to the company, then I've done a lot of thinking. So when I get in the exam, I'm not looking, I'm not coming at it from zero. I might be halfway there on some of these questions. I might have already considered some of these issues that come up. So that's how I would use those I can statements. But I think the key thing is, especially with the strategic case studies, you've got to try and apply your knowledge. You've got to try and apply the knowledge. Okay, so I'm going to flash up on screen like the frequently examined areas. So this is always something I think that like a lot of students worry about. Like what could come up in the exam? What comes up in the exam? So I'll just give you a list of like the frequently examined areas, and then you can have a look at that, right? So you've got the I can statements, which you'll have to do a bit of interpretation, a bit of investigation, see where they relate to the subjects. This is just a list of things that I would go back and maybe do a little bit of revision on. So that's the first one. So take a screenshot, or you can watch the recording and take a screenshot. That's the second one there. So those are all commonly tested models. So there you go. There's the strategic appraisal one I mentioned, safe. So you can even go back and think, oh, right, okay, where would I map these ones back into the I can statement? Okay, but I'm not going to read all of those out. So take a screenshot, and then that'll give you a nice little checklist for when you're doing your revision, right? So there we go, our frequently examined areas. The other thing I wanted to mention was the skills and the verbs. The skills and the verbs. So we are at the strategic case study here. We're at the top level, and congratulations on getting you one more and you're done. That would be so nice, wouldn't it? You have those letters. So the verbs that are likely to be used are advise, assess, evaluate, recommend, review, select. Okay, so those are the verbs. And the biggest complaint I always get from students is, what do they want? What are they asking for? If I just understood what they were asking me to do, I would be able to do it, right? But I don't understand what they want. And you can see there, like CIMA, they've given us a definition of each one, right? So advise, that's that line there. Counsel, inform, or notify. Assess, evaluate, or estimate the nature, ability, or quality of. Evaluate, appraise, or assess. Do you know what's really annoying? If you read this, that they use each other interchangeably, don't they? So if you're assessing, you're evaluating, and if you're evaluating, you're assessing. I think the word I'm looking for here is it's circular. They don't really explain each other that well, do they? So you're like, well, so if I'm assessing or evaluating, what does evaluate mean? Evaluate means to assess. So you can get really confused. So the best way to think about it, right, is generally in the case study, they're going to use one of these verbs. I do tend to do it the same way every single time to keep it nice and simple. You are going to argue the toss most of the time. Like if it says assess or evaluate, right? You're assessing the value of. So you're going to say, why is this a good thing? Why is this a bad thing? Right. And then I mentioned earlier, you get your question, it's got an A and a B. Let's say your A has 50% and it says, can you evaluate this for me? Well, I've got 50%. So I'm going to tell you why it's a good thing. I'm going to tell you why it's a bad thing. And then I'm maybe going to have a conclusion at the end. So you can see I can break my marks down a bit. I've got 50%. So I'm going to say why it's a good thing. Now, I probably want to come up with 2 points about why it's a good thing, right? So, 10% for each point. My paragraph, you want a paragraph about 100, 120 words, right? 100, 120 words. So I'm going to come up with 2 paragraphs explaining why this is a good thing. And I'm going to come up with 2 paragraphs explaining why it's a bad thing. So that's 10% for each paragraph. There's my 40%. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with some kind of conclusion at the end. So like, should you do it or should you not do it, right? But you want to have a balanced argument with these things. That's how you're going to score the marks. So look, that would be my default approach to answering a CIMA case study question. I'm going to argue the toss, and then I'm generally going to have some kind of conclusion at the end. I find that works in the vast majority of situations, regardless of the verb. So, I thought we'd talk about that. In terms of like arguing the toss, this is an area I think we need a bit of work on. What I generally find is, as accountants, we're quite black and white in our thinking. We tend to just have this reaction like, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea. And so we kind of had the conclusion bit, but then what we're missing is the other 40% that we need out of the 50. And so you're going to have to train yourself a little bit to try and come up with some rationale. Like the question is why? Why is it a good idea? Why is it a bad idea? And that's what you need to explain. And you need to be kind of persuasive, right? You need to be a bit persuasive in this. And so again, like this is where I think it helps to go through the pre-scene and I try and apply those. The strategic options thing. You come up with a strategic option. Great, cool. They should diversify into whatever it's going to be. And you then want to go, right, okay, now Stuart mentioned that these are the verbs. This is what I'm going to have to do in the exam. So I'm going to think about, why is this a good option for them? But then what could go wrong? Why is this a bad option for them as well? So I've thought about that ahead of time, right? So, it's very easy to come up with an idea and think it's an amazing idea, but then try and put your like negative hat on and go, right, how could I tear this idea apart? Like what could possibly go wrong? And then again, you're doing lots of thinking ahead of the exam. And so, it'll be a little bit easier in the exam. So I'm sitting so still, the lights are going off. Um, Let me get it back on for a second. I knew that was going to happen. There,
Yeah.
hopefully I'll stay on for the rest of the time. But brings me on to sustainability, right? That might be a theme there. So that's good about sustainability with the lights. Okay, cool. So we've talked about the verbs. So we're going to argue the toss. And then to give you an example, right? Like when I say, can you evaluate this particular thing? People often go, I'm not quite sure what to do. But if I frame it in a different way, like if I said to you guys, look, could you tell me, would you invest in Netflix or would you invest in Tesco's, right? Would I invest in Netflix or would I invest in Tesco's? This is where you might have a reaction to that. You might be like, oh, well, Netflix all the way. Or you might be like, nah, Tesco's all the way, right? But then you have to be able to take a step back and go, well, look, okay, I like Netflix, right? Fine, I would invest in Netflix. But then I have to think about like, well, but why? Why would I invest in Netflix? So I need two reasons why I'd invest in Netflix, and I have to be able to come at it from the other point of view and think, well, why would someone think Tesco's is a good investment, or why would they be against my Netflix investment, right? So you've got to train yourself a little bit in how to do that for the exam. Okay, so I thought just before I get into my teaching philosophy here, so I'm just going to come out of the presentation. Do you guys have any questions so far? Or you can say, yeah, making sense so far in the chat pod, just to check in. I think we've got about 19 people watching. So I don't know, you could give me a thumbs up or something like that. That would be great. So I know I'm making sense so far. Let me know if you've got any questions. Okay, cool. Well, let's thanks, Ramke. Good, thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, if you come on the course, then you're gonna have me as your tutor. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my teaching philosophy, and hopefully some of that's coming out as we're going through the presentation as well. And so I strongly believe that we are not fact machines. When you think about like how we learn for a long, long time, we probably learned through stories, haven't we? So I came up with this image. I can imagine the cavemen teaching each other through stories. So obviously we do need to know facts, but then I always think if I understand the context of something, I understand the why of something, and I maybe even have a story, an analogy that sort of teaches me about it, then I'm much more likely to remember. I'm much more like, so if you do come on a course, that's what I promised you. I'm going to try and bring things to life for you, give you some stories that I think will be more meaningful and easier to remember, right? So that's basically my teaching philosophy. So I thought I'd then try and apply my teaching philosophy to how would I prepare for this CIMA strategic case study, right? So I was thinking, right, what could I use as an analogy for the case study exam? So I thought, well, let's imagine you get this invite through, right? So there's a high school reunion, okay, and it's the end of November, right? Just like the exam. And so I'm like, oh my God, it's the high school. I haven't seen these guys for ages. I want to go and I want to put my best foot forward. I want to look good for the high school reunion. I don't know, maybe I'm making myself sound a little bit shallow now, but I could sort of imagine just wanting to turn up and from you're doing well, Stuart, sort of thing. So I thought, okay, so I've got 6 weeks, haven't I? It's about 6 weeks to get myself ready for this. So it's not a huge amount of time. So then I'm like, God, where do I start? Where do I start with this? I mean, there's so many different directions I could go. Do I go back and, I mean, bring it back to the exam? Do I go back and read through all of my textbooks? Do I just read the pre-scene over and over again? Do I go and look at the past papers? What should I do? I don't know what direction should I do, sort of thing. I want to look good on where do I begin, right? So I think the mistake that people make early on is they don't know where to start. So they don't sort of sit down and go, right, what is the most important thing? What is the thing that's going to give me the biggest bang for my buck, right? So if I'm trying to look hot for my high school reunion, then I'm like, okay, cool, right? So I kind of got two options here, haven't I? It's not like that many like the signpost sets. Really two. I can do my diet, or I could do my exercise, or I could do both, right? And don't know if anyone knows this, but like what's easier? Is it easier to like lose a bit of weight, or is it easier to build muscle, right? Is it easier to lose a bit of weight or build muscle? So it is actually easier, or quicker at least, maybe easier is the wrong word, quicker to lose weight, right? So if I wanted to make the most dramatic visual impact over 6 weeks, I would drop some weight. You know, when you see those body transformation things, and it's like, oh my God, they look completely different. A lot of it is like just they've lost the weight and they kind of reveal the muscle that's underneath, right? So building muscle is much slower than losing weight. So when you think about it, right, in 6 weeks, what am I best to focus on? I'm probably best to focus on my diet rather than exercise. So then I can try and cut that weight. And yeah, I'm going to exercise as well, but I'm not expecting like I'm going to get huge arms over the next 6 weeks, right? That just wouldn't happen. Now, okay, bring it back to the SCS exam. You're like, okay, Stuart, fine. If I had a high school reunion, that's very helpful. But then that's an exam we're talking about. What's the analogy here? So for me, the diet is the exam skills, right? Where could you have the most impact on your performance in the exam is focusing on exam skills. The exercise is the revising all the knowledge, right? Which is what you're going to be tend to do. Like when I gave you that list earlier of all the common topics that come up, I bet your instinct is like, oh my God, I'm going to go back and I'm going to master hedging currency. Or I'm going to go back and I'm going to master CAPM. I'm going to go back and I'm going to master SAFE, Pestel, whatever it is. Right now, in 6 weeks, are you going to get all the stuff that you maybe didn't quite get before and become an expert on it? Unlikely. It's the same as me like adding an inch to my arms. It's very unlikely. So it's not that I'm not going to try, and I'm not saying don't revise, but what is going to be your priority? Your priority should be exam skills, right? You are training to pass this exam. You're not training to become a strategic expert. That's something different. So if I was getting ripped, fit for my high school reunion, I'd focus on my diet. I'd still exercise, but I'd be mainly prioritizing my diet. You guys getting ready for the SCS exam, I want you to focus on exam skills and not go back and read your textbooks over and over again. Okay. So that's the first thing, right? Priorities. Second thing, pick your difficulty. Yeah. So you can play this on easy mode or you can play it on hard mode. Right? I heard this really interesting thing, and it was talking about, we are hardwired at a genetic level to be able to see where everything can go wrong. It's obviously very useful for survival, isn't it? Like that lion over there looks a bit hungry, it might come and eat me, right? So we're very good at seeing how things go wrong. So what you could do, right, and this might be an interesting exercise for you, is sit and go, how could I screw this up over the next 6 weeks, right? How could I screw this up over the next 6 weeks and make my life really, really hard, right? So maybe I don't start studying straight away. I wait all to the end. I think it takes the same amount of pain to pass an exam. You can have an intense pain at the end, or you could have a little bit of pain spread out. What's easier? What's easier? So again, going back to the diet example, it's like I know I'm going to like I need to cut some weight, right? And so we all know it's a calorie deficit, don't we, to lose some weight. So I mean, I could go for like a 300 calorie deficit. That seems quite easy, doesn't it? And sustainable. Screw that. I'll go for 1,000 calorie deficit, right? And then what happens is you're playing on hard mode. You cut your diet in half. You're going to be super hungry after a few days, aren't you? Are you going to be able to keep that going for the next 6 weeks? Unlikely, right? So that how could I screw up my study, right? This equivalent is you think to yourself, I know I'm going to do 2 hours of study every single day for the next 6 weeks for the SCS exam. Are you going to be able to sustain that? Probably not. It would be much easier to do like an hour every other day and maybe a couple hours on Saturday, a couple hours on a Sunday. So you sort of keep things ticking over. And again, that's playing on easy mode. And I think if you play on easy mode, you're more likely to keep it going. Like if I play on hard mode, I might quit the video game early and then have to make up some time later. And again, that's going to be hard. Or I keep things on easy mode, right? So I keep things ticking over. So think about all the things you could do to screw up your study over the next 6 weeks, right? And then just do the opposite. And if you do the opposite of them, then you're in easy mode, right? So I set myself some ridiculous target that I can't sustain. That's a way of screwing up my study. I just try and do it all, right? So I don't give anything else up in my life. I try and do really well at work. I try and have a personal life. I try and keep up with my hobbies and things like that. And I'm still going out on a Friday night and Saturday night and partying and stuff like that. And I'm studying hungover or whatever. All those things would make it harder, right? So you could make life easier for yourself if you did the opposite of that, right? Okay, so rather than me trying to have it all, I'm going to recognize that this 6 weeks is really important. This is life changing. And so I'm going to prioritize my study. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the things that are in my life that I could maybe put down. There's another thing with training, actually. I've been getting into my training recently, and it's called maintenance volume. And I think this is really interesting. So, like, if you want to grow a big chest, right? You want to grow a big chest. It's like, well, you can't grow everything at the same time, can you? So maybe you put your legs down to maintenance volume, so a little bit of squatting, just so they don't shrink on you. But then you can focus it elsewhere. It's the same thing. Like there might be things in your life that you could put down to maintenance volume. So maybe you go out with your friends like twice a week. It's like, well, maybe I could do once every other week, right? So I'm not giving it up. I'm not gonna like have no friends over the next 6 weeks, but I'm just putting it down like to maintenance volume. So okay, once the exam's over, pull back to fun again, sort of thing. So that would make life a little bit easier, wouldn't it? Because you're not trying to do everything. So what can I do to make my life hard, and then do the opposite to make your life easy? Um, Consistency is the key, right? So over the next 6 weeks, we want to be consistent. It's like with the diet thing, it goes back to similar with the diet. If I'm consistent with my diet, I'm going to get the result that I want. What's the things that kind of could throw me off my diet? The weekends are always bad, aren't they? So I don't make good choices at the weekend. So it's just sort of similar to you, right? How do I get consistency? So I think it comes to like brushing your teeth. You want studying to be a little bit like brushing your teeth. Now, I think so. You want it to be a habit fundamentally. So I think, okay, well, how is brushing my teeth a habit? Well, you know, um, I know to do it twice a day, right? So, like, I think one of the key things that people don't think about is what does good look like? So, brushing my teeth is twice a day for 2 minutes. So, I know what I'm aiming for. And so, with your study, I want you to think about, right, how often am I going to be able to say, like, what time do I have available? So, maybe you can study, you know, say 2 or 3 times in the week, and then you do Saturday, Sunday. And Saturday, Sunday, I can do 2 hours each day. That's 4 hours. I can do 3 hours in the week. So I've got 7 hours a week for the next 6 weeks, right? And I know that I have them and I've committed to them. And I guess like having like what does good look like? If I was to stick to that, then I can feel good about my study. And I think if you feel good about things, you're more likely to be consistent, right? I mean, it's a really good starting point is to come up with a time budget and just go, right, okay, how often and how much do I have to do? And then it's like brushing your teeth. It's easier to stick at because well, if I do that, then I can feel good. I mean, theoretically, you could brush your teeth 5 times a day, couldn't you? But you're not going to do that. You're like, twice is enough. I'm happy with that. I've made that call. It's the same thing with studying. What's going to be tempting is you're going to come up with this like, I want to do 100 hours of study before over the next 6 weeks. Like, are you actually going to be able to do that? And if I told you brush your teeth 5 times a day, you might be like, I'm not going to do 5 times a day, so I won't do anything. That's how we tend to think. We tend to be all or nothing. Like 5 times a day is too much, so I'll do nothing. And it's the same thing as if I said to you, like, look, can you guys do 10 hours of studying a week? You might go, oh no, I can't do 10 hours, so I won't do any. But realistically, what can you stick to? What habit can you be consistent with over the next 6 weeks? And that's what you've got, right? That is what you've got. I mean, it's like I'd love to have all the money in the world to spend, but I don't have all the money in the world to spend. Do it. I've got my salary. That's it. I can't make more money. It's just that's all I've got. It's the same thing with time. We can't make any more of it. So decide how much of your time you can dedicate each week to studying, and then you do it, and then you feel good about it, right? Because that's all you've got. I was really bad for this when I was a student. So I would like try and do as much as I could, but I never really had a target that I was aiming for. And so I'd always feel guilty. I'd always feel like I hadn't done enough. But I wish I'd gone through and sort of like, realistically, like how much time can I allocate to studying for this exam? And then if I actually did that, great, I feel good. And I think I actually would have been more consistent with my studying because I don't know about you guys, if you feel like you're not enough, you feel like you're anxious, you're worried, you're frustrated when you're studying, right? I'm never enough, I'm never doing enough. You don't like studying, do you? I didn't like studying. Studying would make me feel bad about myself. But instead of that, I've got my objective measures. I've sat down, I've thought about it, I've planned it all out. I'm on plan and I'm achieving, right? Because if I say I'll do an hour, I get my head down for an hour, and that is success. Doesn't really matter too much what I get done, because the key thing's being consistent. As long as I do something, I'm not sat on my phone for an hour, right? But I'm being consistent every single time, then I can feel good about myself. And there is an element of psychology, isn't there, with exams about confidence. If you can get into the exam and feel confident about it, then I think you're more likely to succeed, especially with this exam, because so much of it relies on being able to think of things. And if you're sat there going, I've not done enough for this, I've not done enough for this, I'm no good, then are you going to be creative in that moment? Probably not. Yeah. Whereas on the other hand, you're like, look, I had a plan, I executed the plan, I am ready, I feel good, then you can do it, right? So consistency is key. How can I make studying like brushing my teeth? You've got objective measures, right? So twice a day for 2 minutes, your objective measure will be however many hours you can afford every week, I think across the whole week. So then we know what good looks like. And then also, toothpaste tastes nice for a reason. It's minty for a reason. You can always give yourself a bit of a reward, can't you, if you hit your study target? So it's like I like peanut butter, so I'd have a. I mean, to be honest, I'd have a whole jar if I could, but maybe like a spoonful of peanut butter. You know, train yourself to have those good habits, right? Don't assume they'll just happen organically. Okay, so there's our roadmap, right? Now, this isn't my final tip, so don't go anywhere just yet. We still have a little bit more to come. So prioritize exam skills would be my tip. Over the next 6 weeks, you want to be working on those exam skills. Have a plan, right? So I think that's part of playing on easy mode is you planned it all out. And over the next 6 weeks, you're not reacting and just like dealing with things and then maybe backloading all your work right at the end. You've got to spread it out. So each week is going to feel easy, even though 6 weeks is going to be a lot. Each week will feel easy because you've got a plan. And then consistency is the key, right? So stick at it. This is important. This is if once you get your letters, there's no taking them away from you. Yeah, I told you guys the story earlier where I bought my own business. That would not have happened if I was not a CIMA qualified accountant. I had to go to 4 different banks to see if they would lend me the money. One of them would lend me the money, and so it was a bit of a fight. It was a lot of back and forth. It took a while. I think if I hadn't had those letters after my name, I would not have got the money to buy the business. Having this qualification is life changing, and you're so close. 6 weeks of like, and then you could be through, you could be done, and that's it, right? So consistency over the next 6 weeks. Okay, so obviously, you can do all that yourself, couldn't you? I mean, theoretically, there's lots of stuff online, isn't there? There's tons of stuff on YouTube. Like I said, I've been getting into my training. I watch a lot of the YouTube fitness stuff, like about exercise selection and programming and stuff like that. And it's good. But I did actually get myself a fitness coach over the summer. And I tell you, one of the reasons I got myself a fitness coach is because they know more than me. They've got experience, right? And I was sick of wasting my time. Like I think I'd been doing it myself for about a year, and I've been changing programs and hopping around and trying different things and maybe looking for the magic bullet, right? And it sounds, I think it's similar to trying to pass the exam. Like we tend to look for the magic bullet. What's the easiest way I can get this amazing result, sort of thing. And so I thought, well, I'll go to this coach because they'll just cut through all the noise that's on YouTube and just tell me what I need to do in order to get the result that I want. So I valued their experience, right? So I thought that was really helpful. Accountability, I would check in with them every single week. Every single week. And if you came on a course with us, you're going to see me every single week. And I'm going to, how did it go? And you'll be like, oh no, I didn't get done what I thought I was going to get done. And now I've got to tell Stuart. So accountability I think is important because it's so easy to let the time fritter away, isn't it? But if you know you're going to be seeing me on a regular basis and I'm going to be asking you how things are going, you're going to be like, I have to do something because I don't want to see Stuart again and having done nothing, right? So I think accountability is really important. And so I knew that I'd have to tell him my weight and how many steps I'd done and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, well, I've got to get it done because I don't want to tell my coach that I've not got it done. And then I think equally in support, accountability is the serious side, but then on the flip side is support as well. If I had, if I went on track on my diet or I missed a session or something like that, I could sort of tell them and they would give me, a bit of empathy because, these things happen. And then they might say, look, this is what you can do to get back on track, right? This is what you can do to get back on track. Or even just like, I don't know, like I'm losing a bit of confidence. Maybe I'm not doing the right thing. Maybe my form on this exercise isn't the best. I could send them a video and they'd say, no, you're golden. That's it. Just keep doing what you're doing. And it's like, great. Just having that reinforcement gives me belief in myself. And belief is a powerful tool. If you, it's like it's like kind of with the study and the exercising. I think if I had a program that I really believe in, I just execute it wildly because this is the amazing program. And so if I just follow this program, I'm going to get the result. I probably would get the result because I believe it. Yeah. And so that support, giving me belief in myself and what I'm doing goes a long way. Right. So there you go. So basically I would be your coach to get you through this exam. So those are things I'd like to bring. I got experiences I gave you guys at the start. I would hold you accountable. If you're not doing it, I'm going to call you out. But at the same time, if you need some help, you got some questions or something like that, you want a little bit of extra support, I'm going to be there for you as well. Okay, so then again, top tips at the end, but I got to do my little bit of selling, so please bear with me. All right, I like to think of it as marketing. Like when I had my business, I had to do some selling. I'm an accountant, so I'm not a natural salesperson. But the way I always told myself is I'm not selling, I'm raising awareness, and then it's up to you guys. Like hopefully you've enjoyed it, hopefully you're getting something useful out of it. There's still a little bit more to come at the end, but there's a give and take. So I'm just going to make you aware that we are an option, Viva. Why would you choose us? Well, we've got 80 cases analyzed from top to bottom. We've done over 9,000 students. We get 4.9 out of 5 on Trustpilot, and we're born online, so it's a fully online company, and so that's why we can be very competitive on our prices. So we'd like to pass those savings on to you guys. And then we've had 3 CIMA Global Pass Rates Excellence Awards, so 2020, 23, and 24. So we're competitive on price, but we're very good quality as well. Yeah. So we've got a couple of options here for you guys. So you've got the core course. So you've got the on-demand pre-seen lectures. So basically you can watch them when you want. You've got the 5 SCS mock exams with solutions, the downloadable lesson notes, and the student discussion group. Okay, so that's the core. If you want a bit more support, you would go for the elite. And so you've got the live workshops with the tutor. So that's where you want that accountability. If you wanted it, feel like you need it. If you don't, no problem. But if you want it, it's on the elite course. There's marking and feedback on all the mocks. Access to private tutor moderated student forums. So that's where we can post each other questions and have a chat. And then we've got the lifetime pass guarantee. So basically, if you did pay for the elite course, you're pretty much like going to stick with us, keep coming back, and eventually we'll get you through the exam. Hopefully you won't need that. Hopefully you pass first time. But we cater to everybody. So if you are watching this and maybe you've been with another tuition provider and you've been unsuccessful, well, you can always give us a try. And we've got students through on their 4th or 5th attempt. Stick at it; it's the last one, and that's good. Okay, so those are the options. I would just say the mock exams, right? Whatever you do, like whoever you choose, try to get some mock exams. It's going to be really hard for you guys to improve on your own. I find like when I explain things, it's always like, okay, that makes sense. Hopefully, right? I tend to get good feedback. I tend to make sense. But in a way, I should make it harder because it sounds so easy when I explain it, and then people think, "Oh, this is easy, right?" And then come to try and do it themselves. And sometimes it's the first time as they try and do it is in the exam, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is actually harder to explain than I thought it was going to be." So you've got to get that practice, right? I mean, if I just said to you guys, "Can you tell me what the word accurate means? What does it mean to be accurate?" Like, that's an idea that's in your head, right? And I guess most of you guys could use it in a sentence, and you could tell when someone's accurate and when they're not accurate, so you can apply it as well. But then if you try to get that idea out of your head, sorry about the lights, 2 seconds. So if you tried to get this idea of accurate out of your head into someone else's head, could you do it? And this is the same problem with a lot of this stuff, is like a lot of it, and the benefit of doing a mock is just crystallizing your thoughts and your ideas. So okay, cool, I practiced getting that out in a way that can make sense. Now I can do that in the exam a lot easier. So whatever you choose, mocks, you need to do some mocks. We're offering a discount code. So I think that's in the pinned comment as well. Offer ends on the 10th of November, 10th of October. So yeah, what's that? Just over a week, to think about it. Okay. All right. Top tips. Okay, so I would recommend using the past exams. Okay, so if you don't have mocks, right, if you're going to go alone, have a look at the past exams. Now, if you do a past exam, you don't necessarily need to read the whole thing. Okay, so I would read just like the start of it, and see what kind of company they are, right? Cool. And then you can go and have a look at the questions and see what you think about the questions, right? Because ideally, right, look, a good answer has pre-seen, unseen, and technical knowledge, right? Those are the three things I'm looking for in a good answer. So if you do an answer for a past paper, you're not going to have the pre-seen, but that's not the end of the world. You still get a chance to read, familiar with them. And then you can always modify, like literally all you could do is just like cross out the name of the old company and put your company, your case study in there. And then you can think about, okay, well, how would I answer this question for the company I care about? And so I do think the past papers are a fantastic resource, and they're freely available on CIMA. So if you're going to go alone, that's great. When if you were to come and do a course with us, then obviously you get the mock exams, so you get questions on the specific case study. So it's give and take. Applied study and preparation. So as I've said throughout, you don't want to just go back and read your textbooks. You want to be applying it as well. And I would say as well, the pre-scenes coming out tomorrow, big day. You're going to be tempted to go away and become an expert on that particular industry. I find I do that every time. Like we had Leo there that was on before, satellites. I'm like, oh, satellites, so interesting. So I went and all learned about satellites. That's fine for me because that's my job, right? Is to like become an expert on the industry. For you guys, you got loads of things going on. You're trying to pass this exam, do well at work, have a life. So you don't need to become an industry expert. But what I would do is do a little bit of industry research. And every time I hear something, I'd be thinking, okay, how does that apply to XYZ PLC, right? There's no point in listening to hours and hours of podcasts and loads of industry research without applying it to the case study. So you can see the theme here, right? Everything I'm doing, I'm thinking about the case study. So what I'm trying to do is load all these stock ideas in my head about the industry, about the theories that I'm revising, and I'm trying to apply them. So if I have to apply that in the exam, I've done my thinking ahead of time. Time management is going to be key. So I gave you the tip on that earlier. Try and spread yourself across the requirements. Again, this is why mock exams are fantastic, because you can do them to time, and then you can see how hard it's going to be to stick to your time, and you can sort of make the mistakes early on before you get in the exam. The more mistakes you make before the exam, the less you're going to make in the exam. So mock exams are fantastic. Quality over quantity, quality over quantity. So people do like to go, blah, here's everything I know. I would rather, like I was saying earlier with the evaluate, right? So I've got 50%. I'm going to come up with two good things and two bad things. And the two good things, each paragraph is going to be about 100 to 120 words. So I'm going to go in depth on two arguments. So that's quality. What you might be tempted to do is go, all right, well, that there's 20% there. I'll put 20 bullet points and I'll get 1% for each of them. No, they don't tend to like that. They like a depth of explanation at the strategic level. So pick quality over quantity. Pick a few points and then go deep on them. Planning. So I think planning is obviously important for preparing for the exam, but planning in the exam as well is going to be really important, because it kind of comes back to the whole like a good answer has a bit of pre-seen, a bit of unseen, a bit of technical knowledge in there. So I don't know about you guys, right? But I'm not great at multitasking. So what I like to do is I like to think about my ideas before I start writing them up. So I would plan my ideas, right? So I mean, I'd spend at the hour, right, for each question, maybe even just 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes would be a good investment. And so I just spend 10 minutes planning the answer to those two things, and then I sort of check, right, before I get going on this, I've got enough marks, and I've each of my thing, I've something from the pre-seen, something from the unseen, and then a bit of technical knowledge. And then, okay, yeah, I've got that. I've got some bullet points here. I'm going to write them up. What I find if you do that is your points are going to be a lot more coherent, because if you try and do it all in one go, you're going to ramble. Yeah, is that what you normally do in exams? So I find most people, what they do is they are typing, right? I'm explaining this point here, and at the same time in my head, I'm trying to think of the next idea, right? So that's where you go incoherent, because you're not really doing either thing the best you could, right? I'm trying to explain one idea while think of another idea. Now, if you can, great. But for me, it never really worked that well. So I like to do all my thinking and then all my writing, and I do find it gives me a better. So planning, I think, is a really good skill to work on. If you're convinced, right? Hopefully I've convinced you, right? I'm going to plan. Sure, that sounds good. Now I find the next thing that happens is people then think I'll do it on the day, right? I'll plan on the day because Stuart's convinced me it's a good idea. But then what happens is you don't do it when you're doing your mock exams. And so you get in a habit, right, of not planning. And then you're thinking on the day I'm going to plan, right? And I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed out, I don't tend to rise to the level of my aspirations. I tend to fall to the level of my habits, right? And what's my habit at this point is not planning, right? So if you're going to plan, you have to start planning when you start doing your mock exams. Try and do it on the first one, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, right? We've got 5 of them available. And then if you do it that way, you've got a nice habit by the time you get to the exam. So I would just, so it comes under the heading like perfect practice, right? So they say practice makes perfect. That's actually not true, is it? Because if you practice it the wrong way, then it doesn't work. You have to practice it the way you're going to do it on the exam, right? Or the way you want to do it on the exam. Or you have to accept whatever way I do it when I do my mocks is going to be the way you do it on the exam. So if you don't plan, then you're not going to plan on the day. If you do plan, you are going to plan on the day. If every time you do a mock, you spend all your time trying to get the first, the second requirement, and tell yourself on the day I'll hit that second requirement, you're not, right? The way you practice it is the way you're going to do it. So you want to make sure, okay, I'm doing it the way that I want to do it on the exam day. And then lastly, typing speed. I just mentioned this because some people tell me, oh, they're not the fastest typer. I think you could actually make a dent on your typing speed over the next 6 weeks. If you get an app or something on your computer, you can even just spend like 10 minutes, when you're watching a bit of TV, just working on typing speed, getting a little bit faster. If you think about it, like if you're at 30 words a minute at the moment for typing and you got it up to 40 words per minute, well, that's a third on top, isn't it? So you are a third faster than you were. And yeah, okay, quality over quantity, but I'd like to have the opportunity to type many, many more words, wouldn't I? So if I can get my typing speed up, that's another 10 words per minute. I mean, it's a 3-hour exam, right? So that's 180 minutes. Another 10 words, it's another 1,800 words you could write. So typing speed, I think. Okay. Right, so that is everything. Thank you guys very much for sticking with me and for my final top tips there. So I'm just gonna make myself a little bit bigger here, and I'll see if you guys have any questions. Right, so we've got a few minutes before we finish up the live stream. Let me know if you guys have any questions for me. Hopefully, you've got something out of it. It's not been too onerous. I always find it amazing how quickly an hour goes. I'm like, oh, this is, I'm not sure if I've got enough content here for an hour, and then it goes really, really quickly. And I also mentioned as well that you're going to have our pre-scene analysis should go live tomorrow at the same time the pre-scene goes in. So I've done that as well. So you guys could check that out tomorrow at some point. And you might be sick of me over the next couple of days. But hopefully we might see some of you guys in class. And if not, and I don't see you again, best of luck with the exam. But any questions you've got, feel free to give me a shout. think we're okay. I'll leave it open for just a few more seconds in case anything comes through. Otherwise, thank you. And Ramke, looking forward to seeing you in class. Okay, I think that's it. All right. Bye for now, everybody.